Okay, we are going to try to extend our game of Tic Tac Toe with some kind of AI in this video, and this is, a nice extension to add on to, for at least for my students, this is an extension activity. I would say this is not the expectation that most projects being handed in might not have this, but if you've finished and you're looking to add something additional, this is a great thing to try out. It really needs to be done, at least, well, in this video we are doing it using the list version of this game. So that's really, my for my grade 11s, they would be hopefully using this list to to manage the state of the game. But you could do it with the variable version as well. You'd kind of have to adapt what we're going to look at. And this is going to require a lot of some serious modifications to your game. So best thing to do at this point is to save it, give it save it as it is. So I'm going to throw this version, Tic Tac Toe, onto my desktop, and then I'm going to save it again. It's going to take a moment, and I'm just going to modify the name and save it again. So I have the old version, and I'll have the improved AI version now. Okay, so I can always go back to what I had before, and I'm not too worried about making mistakes. I mean, I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to get it to the point where I can't fix my mistakes. That's kind of why we're saving two versions. But if we did, we know we have a backup of the old version. So what will AI look like? This is not going to be a smart AI. It's going to I think the first step is just to build an AI that just plays a random position. So doing something randomly, we'll talk about how to do that in a moment. But I think that's a fairly straightforward first step, and it gives us an opportunity to really think about how to kind of get the mechanics of it working. Like, when does the AI play? What do we have to do to make sure the AI at least plays a legal move, or alternates to turns the turn back to the human player, like all of those little details, without getting too lost in the uh, problems around how do we make it play intelligently. So that's going to be our starting point. Is let's try to get an AI working, and I I didn't go. I haven't done anything here other than you might have noticed something up here where I'll come back to this in a moment. I just created this Boolean variable. So, but let's go back to our mousePressed. Let's just remember what we're doing in this code. So in mousePressed, I'm checking a number of things. I'm checking to see if I'm in mode 1, which for my game means that I'm in actual game, game is being played mode, not instruction screen or not game over. I check to see that they've actually clicked inside the game board, because anything x greater than 600 is over here in this kind of little panel, and that's not playing a legal move. And it wouldn't be a valid move if we tried. It wouldn't be a valid index within our list if we tried to convert those coordinates to list indices as we're doing here. So that would produce an error. So we're checking for that, and then we're checking one more thing, which is equally important. We're checking to see that the position we're trying to play is actually empty. So this is one of the bugs we fixed at one point. And if all of those things are true, then we take that turn variable, initially 1, and we put it into the proper indexes for wherever the click was, and we switch turns. And of course, none of this draws anything on the screen. A moment later, the draw loop runs again, and in mode 1, it draws the game board. You might not have this here, I didn't really talk about this yet, is just drawing a line when there is a win. Well, it's also checking for winners to flip it to game over, but this kind of extra bit here is going to do the winner line, but we can look at that at some other time. So I think we have a good idea of what the process is. So how do we interrupt and modify that process so that there's some opportunity for us to introduce code that actually has an opportunity to play its position? Well, something must happen in here. The best way for us to know when it's our turn to play as the AI is to look at mousePressed, because mousePressed only runs when the user's clicked, and this code here in particular only runs when someone's actually made a valid move. So I think our AI is going to happen here. Only when they actually played a legal position and dropped a piece on the board are we going to think about playing. And this is where that Boolean variable comes in that I noted at the top. And I'm just going to do this to make it a valid statement. So pass is simply just a statement in Python that has it doesn't do anything, but it is a real statement because it occupies this indented position here. And instead of confusing Python without this, if I try to run the code right now, it won't work because it's expecting indented code in this if statement, and it gets down here and realizes, no, there's no indented code. Something is really wrong. I can't actually run this code. So I'll put that in there. So just to make sure I'm not introducing anything that's not valid yet. And I'll go back to this here, this Boolean variable. So this is just it's a Boolean. It's a variable called AI, and it's you might call it AI mode. I'm not sure, but it's going to. It might even we might even think of it as a constant. But anyways, I'm calling it AI for now, and it's going to be true is going to trigger the AI to actually play, and we'll just have the AI play second, just to get us started, and have it play that way. The way I'm setting it up, it's going to be a little difficult to have it play first in this manner, but not really. I think we'll keep it here. So I just changed it to true. So this statement would now be true, because true does equal true, and we can put our code in here. I really can just leave it like this, because if you think about it, an if statement always has a condition. A condition is some kind of expression that eventually we can compute and determine that it's either going to be Boolean true or Boolean false. In other words, it might say, oh, well, is x greater than 2, or whatever the condition is. We look at it, we evaluate it, we drop in the values that for any variables that are currently, the variable is currently holding. So if x was currently 1, we would think about, well, is 1 greater than 2? This would be false, right? But when we are using our variable here, the variable is called AI, and it is already a Boolean value, and it's currently true, so it just runs the code. So it skips that evaluate the expression step entirely. So you can leave it as this if you wish to kind of get started, but you probably at some point will be quite happy to leave it like that. It becomes quite natural after a while. Okay, so what would we do? I'm not even sure what we would do here. We would certainly need to, I meant to do that earlier, so check if we're in AI mode, if AI is on, whatever we want to say. If it is on, then our first attempt at this is going to be to pick a random position, a random legal position, and drop it in the game board and drop it into the list, place into the list, just like we did up here, right? What did we do up here? Well, we checked if it was valid, we played our position in the list, and then we switched to next turn. In fact, that could just be next turn right now, but we'll come back to that. Let's think about picking a random position. Let's forget about this for a moment. Let's just think about random. The random function in processing under Python is called random. If you're already using some random numbers in your sketch for whatever reason, and you've imported random, that is not the same thing as the random function here. That's the random module. It's a great module. It's got lots of additional features. It's the built-in Python random module. But because it's called the exact same thing as this, it will interfere with being able to use this function. So I don't think most students would have done that. So I'll just continue with this because this is a good starter. It's documented here. And basically you are going to give it an upper bound or a lower and upper bound, which it will never, and it will give you a float, a random float between those values. Let's look at that. So I think to look at it, it's way easier if we just quickly put together, I don't think we even, okay, so whatever, we can just put in a size like we always do, and we can put in a draw, and we can print this random thing that we're trying to figure out what's going on. So let's give it some numbers. We know that we want our indexes to go from 0 to 2. So let's see what that looks like. We're looking down in the console, and we should see a lot of numbers because it's just running inside of the draw loop. So there they are. We see numbers that start with a 0 with a long decimal portion. It's a float. It said it was going to be a float. And we see 1s with a decimal portion. We do not see any 2s. And it does say that in here that doesn't include the up to but not including. So these are not, these do not include the endpoints. So we never see exactly 0. We could sit here for a long time and watch for it. We never see exactly 0. We never see exactly 2. We don't see either of those. And we see floating point numbers. Well, we know we need integers, so let's just go straight to the next step because we know they need to be integers. But having seen those numbers, we know we're going to get zeros because all those 0 point somethings have become zeros. And we're going to see 1s because all the 1 point somethings are going to generate 1s when they're turned to integers. We just dropped off the whole floating point portion. But we don't see 2 anything. If we change this to a 3, we get lots of numbers that will be 2 point something. And we turn it to an int, and we get our 2s. So I think this is kind of our approach to get a random number between a random valid index, which is either 0, 1, or 2. That random module in Python will give you other ways of doing it. So if you're using that, that is fine, and you'll hopefully know how to kind of proceed from there. So we need a random x value, and or a row if you want to think of it that way, and a column and a row. So we have 2 random numbers here, and let's just drop this in the list. Let's just not worry about whether that's a legal spot. A legal spot, I mean by that whether or not it's a empty spot that has a 0 in it. And remember that turn variable right now, I mean, if we had been playing the code and we started as player 1 dropped their piece and the next turn was called, so it would be a 2 at this point. So that will give us a 2 to put into the list, and then we go to the next turn. Let's see, we've written a fair bit of code there. Let's see what happens. So I clicked top right, and this would have flipped it to player 2. We would have checked this. This is true because it's the Boolean variable I set at the top of the code. We don't need this anymore. We picked a random number. Apparently we picked x equals 0, y equals 0, 1. And then we placed that into the grid with a 2 there. And then we flip this to back to a 1 by calling that next turn. If you remember what that next turn function looks like, it just says if it's a 1, make it a 2. And if it wasn't a 1, it was a 2, so make it a 1. And so I should be able to play the next piece. There. Ooh, look how smart this AI is. It has blocked me. And, whoa, what happened there? What happened there? We had the AI do exactly what it's not supposed to be able to do. What we want to look for is like looking at this screen. If I play a piece, do any of the existing pieces on the board turn into a circle? Does the AI get to try to, you know, take a position that's already being played? I think it just happened there. Now the chances of it playing on top of itself are, you know, somewhat good, and it dropped on top of itself there. Oh, it really keeps doing it. And I'm going to win there. I'm just going to start again. Will the AI play in a position that we will see as being, you know, a square turning to a circle? No, it's playing very... There, it just played. This was a square. It did that before, but we might not have been looking for it. This was a square, and it turned it to a circle. That's not good. That's not how, you know, AI is going to cheat, really. So we can't do this until we do the exact same thing we did here, which is, hey, let's just check, is this a valid position? Let's just try that. Let's see if this is not equal to a 0. If we picked a spot and it wasn't valid, it would be a 1 or a 2. So that just means we should pick again. Let's try this. This might be a kind of the thought process that you might go through the first time. So you pick the position and you say, oh, is this legal? Is this not equal to 0? If it's not equal to 0, I'll pick again. Now, of course, you're probably already thinking, well, wait a minute. What if it picks yet again another position that's occupied? Let's just see if we can see that happening. Maybe you wouldn't have thought of that. Well, what did it do there? It did it exactly on the first click. I played square, all right, and it picked an occupied position here. It must have picked 0, 0 as well, and then found out that that was not equal to 0, so because I played there, it's a 1. So it picked again, and it ended up with another 0, and it dropped it on there. Let's just keep going and see if we can make it do it again. So we want to just watch for the one that is most visual really for us is when it changes one of my pieces to a square to a circle. So I play a square there, play a square there. It just happened there. I dropped a square here and it played here. So it clearly can pick twice in a row a occupied position. I mean, why wouldn't it? Why couldn't it, really, is the question. This can't be an if statement. It has to keep picking until it knows for sure that it picked one that is not equal to 0. So we're just going to change this to a while loop. You have to be very careful at this point. While loops are not that common in processing. This is one of the places where you actually will see one. And I'm saying be careful because if you make a mistake in your condition here, you can send it into an endless loop, and processing doesn't recover well. So this is a good point to save our code, because we may end up having to shut it all down and force quit it or whatever. You want to think about this if this is actually indeed correct. So we'll just think about it for a moment. If you pick a position and it's currently occupied, if it's not equal to 0, if it's equal to 1 or a 2, you pick it again. This will become a problem too if this AI is trying to pick a position and the game board is actually totally full. Then it's going to get stuck. But we won't worry about those things. We're just going to run it again. We're just going to see if it's finally trying to play a... did I do it? These are all zeros in our game board, so that should have worked. What happened there? Did I make this? So I'm playing, oh, it's not very happy about that. What did I do here? Um, oops. Okay. I made a very. I copy and pasted the code. Well, you were. This is. This is a. Being in the classroom is so much better because someone would have noticed that and said, "What are you doing? It's craziness." It's not based on the mouse click. My mistake here was that I was checking. I tried to kind of grab this from the existing code because I thought that would be instructive, but of course I'm not checking the right grid position doing that. So let's just see. Okay, so this should be working now. Should be working now. So I played this position. I think we'll be able to, click for a long time and the AI is not going to grab my spaces away. Let's see how smart it is. It's just luck, isn't it? Yes, it did it. So it's one. Oh, and the one, this thing picked that up eventually. Um, and the game is over. So I just got beat by that AI. As we all know, that's where the world is going. But so let's see. Um, yeah, I mean, that was the idea, to have it play a random position and have it do so by inspecting the existing game board. I made my mistake there, just to be clear. What I was checking here was that the click by the user, because I left this as mouse X and mouse Y, those were still where I had clicked. So this position was just checking to see whether or not I had clicked in an empty spot. And of course it was empty when I clicked it, but it wasn't empty after I dropped my piece in. So it was one of those situations where it got stuck in the loop and you could see nothing happening. Um, so that was fixed. So this seems to be working. This is our random, I need a reset button. I don't have a good reset button there. The only other thing I'd say that the AI could do would be the other improvement, I think, that would make it certainly appear like it was playing a much stronger game, would be that if it happens to notice two in a row, then instead of picking randomly, it knows that the strategy should be to block that position. So we really could put that in here. I'm uncertain about whether or not I should try to turn this into a function. I don't think I'll do that. So I'll just keep going where we are. So let's just see. Let's see if we can find a. I'll just do this one. So I'll find out if I have two positions here. You can see this could be a lot of if statements. Clearly, this is going to be a lot of work to try to go through all of those. We could certainly use some loops to help us, but I'll just do a straight if statement. So I'm going to look for grids. I'm going to look on row 0, and I'm going to look at position 0, 1, and position 2. Now, if those are equal to each other and they are equal to my player number, then that means that I'm going for the win here, and that the AI should play 0, 0 and set it to its variable. I'm just going to make that turn. This needs to change. I need to do something else with that later, but anyways, I'm going to drop that piece in there. So and that means I've played my turn. In other words, it can't play randomly as well, because it would play two spots. Let's just see what happens. So I played those two positions. The if statement recognized that and dropped a position here, and then continued on with a random position, setting itself up for the win. The that's just random. So the whole random thing needs to be the whole random thing needs to be placed as an else clause. and then we can go to the next turn. In any case, whether we played random or we played, we checked using an if statement. In either case, it goes to next turn. So that should fix it. And I'll add one more if statement, then I'll stop. So it's just getting smarter and smarter. It's already blocked me from the case I want to do. So let's see if we can. Okay, so it played there and it didn't cheat, and it's my turn. So what if we check for this one, just because this is another win case that we could go through, that we could go to from after this one. After this one is blocked, then let's try to set up this one. And of course, you probably would be more, you would probably tackle these in a more consistent fashion. Maybe do all the top rows, and then loop it and check all rows, and then try doing the same thing in another orientation. But I'm just going to go straight down to this one, which is 0x1 and y2. Remember, our y's come first, right? Because in our list, these are the y variable coming first, pulls out this actual list. So that's kind of like a row, and it's the top row. So it's kind of like y equals 0 gives us this row, and then the next indice gives us the position, almost like the x variable within there. So we were playing for, I've lost my spot here. We were going for y equals 0, 1, 2, and x equals 0, 1. So we've got that correct. If that's the case, then no, I'm sorry, I'm not checking right. We want to check if this is so y0, we want to check that this position is occupied, this position is occupied here, center, so that's 1, 1. And do those, are those equal? And if they're equal and equal to me, then our move is going to be play row 2, 0, 1, 2, position x0, column 0, 1. So that means we play there. So it didn't play here because I have to add something, don't I? It does want to play here. So we have to check that we didn't already do this turn on the previous turn. So we actually have to check. So what I'm saying here is on my second move, this is going to just be one extra piece we have to add in. I just want to make sure that this position is in fact empty, that I didn't already play it. And if I found that these two positions are 1s and this is not a 2, then I'm going to play it. So I haven't added that in yet. And then it would go to the next one. So in every case, I want to also check, hey, is the position I'm going to play, did I already play that position? So this has to be empty. Okay, so I just have to check that it's empty. 0, 0 is this position. And same with this position. Okay, so are these two occupied by player 1 and this is empty? Otherwise, we're trying to play, we could, depending on the order of these, try to play a position that's already occupied. You would see that. That's kind of getting to be that's a nasty bug. It'd be hard to kind of see that at first. Let's just run it. So we're hoping, oh, so good. We're hoping that it played this spot. So we're hoping now that it will play this spot. But of course, what it's really doing is playing this spot again. Oh, these two are occupied, I'll play here. And we don't see any position appear. So it's that same thing we did before. No, you can't play in an occupied position, AI. You think you're so smart. And you're trying to play here. Don't do that. Only do that if it's a 0 only play that if it's unoccupied. That gets tacked onto all of these. Okay, and if this is empty, then you can play there. So that should improve that. No. Oh, yes. Okay, well, at least it's going to play a random position now and not... Oh, beat me again. At least it didn't try to play this position again. So let's see if we can at least get to our next... Well, actually, I should have kept going there. That was okay. Okay. Okay, it played there. Oops, I hit my... Why did it do that? No, it was supposed... it was supposed to block me, but it went for the win. That's hilarious. Why did it do that? I must... So this is x equals 0, 1, and this is 1, 1, and that was equal to a 1, and 0, 0 was empty. It wasn't empty. I'm copying and pasting here. I got to be really careful. Sorry about that. But you know, I'm going to leave it in the video because, well, one, because I thought that was really funny, but two, because it really does show you what happens when you make the mistake. I'm just checking that this position is empty. It's left over from this if statement. I was not checking if this position was empty, the position we want to play in. So now we got to go through the whole process again. And so far so good. It didn't play this spot because it had already played it, and now it's playing this spot. It's blocking me here. I think that is going to have to. I think this is a really good start for getting an idea of how to make an AI. I think the only other thing you might want to do after this, if you really were interested and you were feeling like you really wanted to deep dive into a kind of another idea, would be to try to do a recursive search and determine what the likelihood of winning is for all empty positions before playing a position, and then play the position with the best likelihood of winning, or the best number of ways of winning. But that's a whole other video or two, and hopefully that gets you started. And I'm sorry I made a couple of mistakes in there, but I think it turned out for the best, so we'll just leave it at that.